Hi, my name is Gianna Jarek, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Hylton Watchdog.
Hi, my name is Victoria Miranda, and I'm a staff writer for the Watchdog.
Today, this is the first recording of our new podcast for journalism called Looking to the Future. We will be discussing state colleges, the FAFSA, SATs, basically everything you need to know for college. Our first episode today is about
William and Mary.
Now, before we get into our interviews, let's talk about William & Mary's application process. William & Mary takes both the Coalition and the Common application, but the Coalition is only accepted for freshmen. The application fee is $75. There are fee waivers if you have served in the military or you are in a full-time service program through AmeriCorps. There is a requirement for the SAT or the ACT without the essay, and subject tests are not required. The average GPA of accepted students at William & Mary is a 3.9 unweighted, an SAT score of 1360, and an ACT score of 31. These scores are super scored.
So for the school and your school report, you need a counselor recommendation, a mid-year report, a final report of your grades, teacher evaluations. They are optional, but they have to be 3 of them, and then other evaluations are also optional, also 3 of those. There's an optional William & Mary essay. Optional means highly suggested. And the prompt is, beyond your impressive academic credentials and extracurricular accomplishments, what else makes you unique and colorful? We know nobody fits neatly into 500 words or less, but you can provide us with some suggestion of the type of person you are. Anything goes. Inspire us, impress us, or just make us laugh. Think of this optional opportunity as show and tell by proxy and with an attitude. Our first interview today is with Ms. Pomfret, school counselor at Hylton High School. So we have a few questions for you. So first off, why did you decide to go to William & Mary?
Why did I decide to go to William & Mary? I really wanted to go to UVA because my brother went to Virginia Tech, and I wanted to be a pain in the butt little sister and go to the competing school. And then I actually went to UVA to visit UVA. It was beautiful, but it was way too big. I went to a very small high school. I graduated with 36 people.
Oh, wow.
Right, very small. And then I knew I wanted to be at a competitive and challenging school, and then I actually went to visit William & Mary's campus, and it just automatically felt like home. It was beautiful, it was smaller, and then I got in, so it worked out.
What did you major in?
I started school to be an English teacher. I wanted to teach high school English, and then I ended up changing my major halfway through to sociology.
Cool.
So I have a sociology
Why
degree.
sociology?
I was fascinated by it. I love groups. I love watching how groups interact.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think going to William & Mary gave you advantages in your field?
Well, okay, that's a great question, and I want to kind of break it down a little bit. With sociology, in some degrees, you have to continue your education. Because with sociology, you can kind of do everything and nothing. So I knew I was going to have to get a master's degree. Could I have gotten that degree anywhere? Yeah, I couldn't have gotten a sociology degree anywhere. I know that I made really good friendships and really good connections and relationships that encouraged me along. Do I think it helped me with my later professional stuff? Not necessarily. Because we know it doesn't matter where you go. It's what you study and what you do with it. So.
But do you think the experience at William & Mary was worth it?
Oh, 100%. It was very challenging. It was a very difficult school to be at, and it was very humbling because I'd always been like the smart kid, and then suddenly I was at a school with all smart kids, and that was difficult for me. But I have some of my best friends still are from William & Mary. So,
how difficult do you think was it to get in?
We're talking 20 years ago, so I think it was harder than I realized. I think now it's harder. Yeah. It's just so competitive to get into schools.
Yeah. What types of people do you think should apply to that school?
People who love to learn, people who love to be challenged, people who are okay with getting things wrong, because you're going to mess up. And I think that was challenging for me, is I'd always gotten A's, and then I got there and I got like a C, and I was like, it was just, it blew my mind, and it was very hard for me to kind of reconcile being like the smart kid, and then suddenly I wasn't, not bad grades, right, C's and average, but it was really hard for me to learn. I wish I'd learned some of that in high school.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite memories from William & Mary?
Oh my goodness. I love fall at William & Mary because there's so many trees, and it's got the big colonial buildings. There's something called the Sunken Garden, which is this huge football-sized field garden where people can just go and lay and play games or study. And in the fall, it's just beautiful, all the colors. So it's really pretty.
What were your favorite things about the school and like your favorite campus traditions?
My favorite things about the school were the people. Working with like curious, interested people. I loved my classes. I loved being there. The atmosphere was really comfortable. And tradition-wise, they had lots of silly traditions because there was colonial stuff there. So even just having like the fife and drum corps come through on like the weekends, we did would ring the bells at graduation, which was always really fun. So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Were you in any clubs or extracurricular activities while you were there?
I was in a sorority, so I was very involved with that, and I was in leadership in my sorority. And then I also did things, there was like a sociology honor society, or I don't think it was called an honor society, it's like a sociology club. I worked with them, but my sorority got most of my time.
Would you recommend joining Greek life at William & Mary?
It was really beneficial for me, but I mean, it kind of depends on what you're interested in. They have such a diversity of clubs. I think if you're looking for anything, it's there.
Right.
Sorority was what was best for me.
Did you balance a job while you were at William & Mary?
I worked in the summers. I did not work during the school year. I was privileged enough not to have to do that, but I did work in the summers to save money. I worked either in restaurants or I actually worked at the public library for a while.
Cool.
While you were at William & Mary, since it's right next to Colonial Williamsburg, were students able to get jobs there?
I didn't personally know many people that did. But that doesn't mean that people... There were a lot of restaurants, so probably at the restaurants. I don't know that I can answer that question well.
Right. And then, did you get any scholarships or financial aid there? Like, how did that work personally for you?
So I did... This was actually a good lesson. My freshman year, I had applied for a lot of scholarships my senior year of high school for my freshman year. So I had very generous scholarships, and I did receive some student loans. I did not know that I should apply for scholarships my sophomore, junior, senior. I thought that they would automatically... re-up, and they didn't. So I ended up having to take up more loans for later years because I was not a very good steward of my of my financial aid, and I'm paying for it. So.
All right.
I don't know what else to ask.
I mean, what did you take away from the school? I know for like certain schools, it's like it's better for this versus that. Like Virginia Tech, you don't necessarily go there to study history. But what do you think William & Mary is better for in terms of studying?
Goodness. So they have a strong international studies program, and like they have a lot of good pre-law things because they do have a law school there. As a school counselor, I should probably be able to tell you more about the programs. I think what was really good there was just being with really good, smart, driven people that wanted to push themselves. So I wasn't focused, at my experience there, I was not focused on the programs. I was focused on the people.
Did you get your master's at William & Mary?
No, I got my master's at George Mason.
George Mason?
So after William & Mary, I went to NC State and worked on my teaching certificate. I got that, and then my husband was in the military, so we moved a lot. And then I went to George Mason for my master's when we settled here.
Did you do any foreign travel while you were at William & Mary?
No, and I very much regret that. That's probably my only regret from my time at William & Mary was not doing study abroad. I lived, my dad was a Marine, so I moved around a fair amount, so I actually got to live abroad when I was growing up, so I think I took that for granted. Yeah. But I had lots of friends who did, and I really regret not doing that.
Have you been back to William & Mary since?
Yeah, usually we go back once a year, like either for homecoming or my girlfriends and I'll go like for the day. I've taken my kids there. But I love it. I get excited when I know I'm going back to campus, so it's a special place.
All right. I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. It was nice to talk about it.
Our second interview is with Mr. Stanley, AP Euro teacher and World 1 and World 2 teacher.
So, Mr. Stanley, why did you decide to go to William & Mary?
I visited Williamsburg when I was in middle school and saw the college there and learned of its history and how old it was, and that's one of the oldest colleges in the country, and decided then and there that was the school I wanted to go to. So it was no other reason than it's really old and that's cool, and I wanted to go there. And then as I learned more about it and discovered what an excellent school was, it just seemed like a perfect fit.
Yeah. So what did you major in?
I majored in history with a minor in classical civilizations.
All right.
Did you just do study abroad?
No.
No? Okay.
Not as big a thing when I was there.
All right. And so what kind of advantages career-wise do you think William & Mary gave you within the history field?
Within the history field?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that it gave me any specific advantages in the history field. I suppose if I wanted to do graduate work in history, I'm coming out of a very strong program, and that would have helped. But coming out of college and moving right into the job market, I think the only advantage was simply the school's reputation.
I mean, in general, do you think William & Mary gave you any special advantages moving forward after college?
Like with the programs or anything, like resources?
I don't know enough to answer that question. I would like to think the school's reputation perhaps will draw my application to the top of the pile, but then you have to back that up in an interview. But I don't know. That's hard to say.
Do you think it was particularly hard for you to get in?
It's very hard to get in.
Very hard. All right. And then, what type of people do you think should apply to William & Mary?
Gosh, that's hard to say. I mean, 20 some odd years ago when I applied, it was, nerdy bookworm kind of people. I imagine it's still nerdy bookworm kind of people now, but nerdy bookworm now isn't what it was 20 some odd years ago. I mean, cliques were far more clearly defined 20 some odd years ago when I was in high school. Not today, but I mean, you got to be smart. You got to be kind of a book nerd and value academics, I guess.
Did you participate in any extracurricular activities or like Greek life at William & Mary?
I was involved in Greek life.
You were in a fraternity?
I founded a fraternity.
Please tell us about that.
Nah, there's not much to tell. I mean, that was the best of both worlds. You get the benefits of being in a fraternity and the connections that it opens the door to when you graduate without having to actually do any of this stupid fraternity stuff. I was in a service fraternity that did service work around the Williamsburg community. We worked with a women's shelter and did basically odd jobs, handyman work around there. And that was... Oh, and I was involved in hall council, but that's super nerdy stuff. But I loved it.
All right.
What was your favorite memory from going to William & Mary?
For the purposes of this podcast,
a good wholesome memory.
My favorite memory might be junior year, when this is super nerd stuff. There was an attempted coup, if you will, within the hall council. A rebellion against the elected hall council leadership that resulted in the officers getting removed and me getting installed as president of hall council.
Wow.
That's kind of funny. That's super nerd stuff.
Are there any favorite William & Mary traditions you guys did?
There are a lot of William & Mary traditions. I unfortunately did not participate in many of them. There's a freshman tradition of 3 things you do. You jump the wall of the governor's palace. I never did that because I was too scared to get in trouble. You jump into Crimdale, which is the just neat little thing. I never did that because I was too scared to get in trouble. And I can't even remember the third one, but I didn't do that one either because I was too scared to get in trouble. And then your senior year, you ring the bell. There's a bell in the Wren building. You ring the bell on the last day of classes. I couldn't do that because the last day of classes, I was student teaching.
Oh, all right.
So there are lots of neat traditions, and I'm sad we didn't do any of them.
And did you get any scholarships there? Did you
Nope.
work? Did you work during your
Nope.
time? You didn't? Not even the summers?
Oh, I worked in the summer,
Summers, okay.
but I mean, it wasn't to pay for school. It
Okay.
was
And then,
spending cash.
what would you tell someone applying there in general, like advice?
This would be the same advice to anyone going to college. Choose a college based on what you want to study. Go off to school focused on the idea of getting an education and broadening your mind. Don't go off to school to check a box or simply with an idea towards wanting to get a job that pays a lot of money, because it's a miserable experience if you're not there for the intrinsic value of getting education. I know one of the things I loved about it is that people took getting an education pretty seriously, and people took their classes seriously. People had fun, and they knew how to have a good time, and people would have a good time outside of class, but we were there focused on class and getting good education. I listen to kids talk nowadays, and I sometimes think that's kind of lost.
Yeah.
People look at colleges, it's where you go for spring break and to have fun, and I have to take classes too, but you need to be academically minded if you go there. It's still pretty nerdy in that sense, which is I love.
Have you been back to the campus since you graduated?
Oh, many times. I haven't been back in a couple of years now, but for a good stretch, I went back every single year. The last 2 or 3 years, just different scheduling conflicts prevented me from going back for homecoming. But normally I went back every year. Now, one of my best friends from school, his daughter's now a student there, so it's more reason to go back to see her and hang out there.
Do you know Miss Pomfret?
No.
She went to William & Mary too, as I were interviewing you.
Same year as me?
I don't
Is that
know
what you
what
said?
year she went.
Ms. Lyles is also a graduate. She and I were there at the same time, but I didn't know her.
Oh, interesting.
There are a couple of us in the building.
Do you know any fun facts about William & Mary to close out it?
It is the second oldest school in the country. It is the only college in the United States with a royal charter. It is the only college in the United States with a coat of arms registered in the College of Heraldry in England. Has the first honor code in the United States, the first law school in the United States, a lot of firsts. Used to be a private school. It's now public. I don't know. Give me time. I could think a lot.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
That's all for today. I'm Gianna Jarek.
And I'm Victoria Miranda.
And remember, when you're looking into the future, look to this podcast. Thank you for listening.
This podcast was sponsored by the Hylton Watchdog staff and advisor, Miss Basio.